Well, good evening, everybody, and I hope you all had a Merry Christmas, and I would wish you a Happy New Year, but it's already started off with a bang. So why don't we just go ahead and launch into prayer, and we're going to say two Aves this evening. One for, our typical opening prayer, and then we'll follow that up immediately with a second Ave, because Patricia's son had apparently just taken a bad fall and is asking for prayers. So we will also pray for Patricia's son. So, in nomine Patris, et Filii, et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum. Benedicta tu in mulieribus, et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus.
Sancta Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostrae. Amen.
Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum. Benedicta tu in mulieribus, et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus.
Sancta Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostrae. Amen.
Our Lady of Victory,
pray for us.
In nomine Patris, et Filii, et Spiritus Sancti. Amen.
Amen.
All right. So, had a little crash rearrangement of my stuff around here this evening, as I had broken everything down. We rearranged stuff in the basement for Christmas, and had to get a bunch of stuff put together. And anyway, all of this was broken down, and I had to reintegrate it and reassemble it. I'd forgotten that I had to do this. So before I got started, I had to put all that back together. Anyway, this evening's topic, before we get into this evening's topic, let me just kind of give you a recap of where we are here at the Lepanto Institute. There are a lot of different things that we're talking about doing in the new year. As you know, we just spent a lot of time last year conducting a ton of research with regard to CRS and CCHD. We put out a ton of reports. We've got several reports coming out regarding Catholic Relief Services that will be, Catholic Campaign for Human Development, that'll be coming out sometime in the near future. But I just want to give you a quick update on that front. I have, and of course, this doesn't go beyond our group because it would reveal certain things, but I may or may not have a few dummy email accounts that I may or may not use to harass certain members of the USCCB. And in this hypothetical scenario where I
hypothetical.
Yeah, hypothetical. Yeah. Where I am writing to the USCCB under a possible pseudonym. This individual wrote to the CCHD and said, "Hey, what's the deal with this video report on CCHD that said that you guys were lying in this memo and that you were funding an organization that was doing all this political stuff? And what's up with this other report that said that CCHD gave money to this group that said that they're using, that they're encouraging girls to have abortions while they're in prison?" So that email was potentially sent out just before Christmas, and there was no response. And the email was perhaps forwarded on, and just kind of said, haven't heard from you guys, figured it was the holidays and that maybe you were busy and haven't responded yet, but I hope somebody can respond. Well, Ralph McLeod, the executive director of the CCHD, said this. He actually put this in an email. Christmas blessings. Thank you for your ongoing interest in the Catholic Campaign for Human Development. As you very wisely imagined, we have been quite busy with not just the holidays, but with our ongoing work with the low-income people who now find themselves buried in a crippling and deadly pandemic.
It's so crippling and deadly that you need a test to determine if you have it.
Yeah.
Please continue.
Right. This only magnifies the desperation, but we continue to live in hope. a hope that radiates from the Christ child yet once again. As for your concerns, they are quite serious, and it is very important that we give due diligence and discretion to each. As you would imagine, it involves lots of people, and not just web posts and videos, probably being a reference to my reports. We are investigating with counsel of the local bishops, national bishops on the subcommittee of bishops, and the low-income organizations where the allegations originate. As a matter of course, over the 50 years, we have never funded campaigns or done anything to but promote the dignity of life. That said, where human beings are involved, mistakes can be made. We are determined not to make mistakes, and where mistakes or oversights have been made, we will and have swiftly corrected them by withdrawing support. Really? So you want to provide a list of those organizations you've stopped supporting? That'd be helpful. The report and video speaks without relationship to the local churches, diocese, or people themselves. Using only websites and social media can cause confusion and oftentimes be ultimately misleading. Mr. Hitchborn, you have caused confusion and delay, said Mr. Topham Hatt. Thomas went back to the steam yard. Come on, Ralph.
At least try.
Yeah. We at the CCHD have the benefit of working hand in hand with the diocese, funded groups, and a committee of bishops who supervise our work. In other words, well, we at the agency have access to all the other members of the agency so that we can have a series of checks and balances within the agency that makes sure that there is no corruption here at the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, or any other alphabet soup agency that you may have concern about. So, in a word, we've investigated ourselves and found ourselves to be innocent. Back to his email. This compels that we get it right. Sure. We have been in existence for over 50 years, and no doubt lives have been changed, enhanced, and saved by this important ministry of the bishops. As I mentioned, we are continuing to investigate these allegations and hope to have a conclusive answer in the coming days. I won't hold my breath.
No.
In the meantime, we've taken measures to provide extra monitoring and restrict funding until full satisfaction by all parties. Thanks again for your concern. In the Newborn King, Ralph McLeod. Thanks, Ralph. That's, every once in a while, I just kind of feel like the sheepdog that walks in. Morning, Sam. Morning, Ralph. Morning, Ralph. Morning, Sam.
Punch the time card.
Yeah, punch the time card. Yep. Go to beating each other up. Wait to the end of the day. Punch the time card. Hey, Ralph. Hey, Sam. Ridiculous. But that's where we are. So currently, we are conducting some further research into CCHD grantees. Like I said, we've got some reports that are going to be coming out soon. In the meantime, we're considering a few other programs and projects that we're putting on the table. So the board is going to be discussing these things. We'll try and figure out what the direction we want for the coming year to be fairly shortly. And once we have a direction and an understanding of what we want to do, I'll let you know. So for tonight, before we came on, Jim and I were just kind of having a powwow session, and we were talking about what we wanted to talk about. And clearly we wanted to talk about the recent events this past week, the various assaults on our liberty, the very obvious coup that's taking place. And we were trying to come up with talking points, maybe an outline about how we wanted to handle the discussion, what we wanted to say, and what we thought was, you know what, really and ultimately, this should be a conversation. This should be a discussion. I mean, we're here to give you our insights into what's taking place, how to handle it, and what can and should be done. In the meantime, our available information is pretty much what you guys have. We don't have any direct hotline to the White House, and in fact, it seems that Twitter and Facebook and several other social media outlets have blocked President Donald Trump. They've shut down his account. They are not allowing any real communication from him to the outside world. There are a lot of rumors that are swirling around, a lot of Twitter posts and Facebook posts saying, oh, this is all a trap and President Trump is getting ready to spring the trap. And maybe that's true, but there's no way to verify any of it.
Right.
There is simply no way to verify it. So my word of caution is not to be drawn in by the claims that there is some sort of secret plan that's being put into place whereby everybody in Congress is going to be arrested and sent to Gitmo. As much as I would love for that to be true, I just don't see it happening. And the reason is this. I got my degree in political science and economics, and primarily what I focused on was political philosophy. And the first law of political philosophy is that no government has any power except for the size of its ability to impose force. That's it.
Yes.
President Trump may be the president of the United States, but if no one listens to him, if no one follows orders,
right,
then his authority as president stops with the words that he issues forth. Right. That's a terrible and frightening thing, but it's also the truth.
Very true. I just want to add something.
Yeah.
It was interesting as you and I were discussing before we went on. What I found fascinating is there are certain news sources or institutions that I go to that I can rely on. And as I was trying to gather information for this evening, it was amazing to me. As you and I were just saying, they're all they're all sort of capitulating.
Yep.
You know what I mean? You're kind of going, when you start hearing these guys, I think I mentioned a few, the Heritage Foundation, the Hoover Institution, talking a little bit, and they're all saying, well, there was no evidence. And so, we have to move on. I'm going, wait a minute. And so, I mean, not to get down this rabbit hole right now, because let's face it, we have to face facts. They succeeded.
Yes, at least in terms of taking over various aspects of the federal government. Yes, it is a fait accompli.
Yes.
The coup is completed. They have those positions of power, and it would be folly for us to hang on to any unrealistic hopes.
Yeah, at this point, yeah.
While as Catholics we are obligated to have faith, we are also obligated to accept reality for what it is. And barring a miracle, and I won't put the miraculous outside of the realm of possibility. I certainly would love to see a miracle. But barring a miracle, Joe Biden is going to take the oath of office, and he will be our president for about 4 months, and then Kamala Harris is going to push him out of the way. I mean, it's just the way it is,
I hate hearing it.
And then, of course, she's either going to appoint Hillary Clinton or Nancy Pelosi to be her vice president. So we'll have the girl power squad in the White House. Yeah. At which point, one of the two of them is probably going to do something to push Kamala Harris out of the way. And it's going, we saw this in ancient Rome.
Right.
It was very clear. From the moment that they assassinated Julius Caesar, you had a rapid succession of leaders in Rome because they were very quick to stab each other in the back. Very quick.
This is great news because, as we all know, that this is a nod towards diversity. So as opposed to the competency hierarchy, by evenly distributing on things like race and gender, we are guaranteed to have an excellent functioning government. Right?
Yep.
There you go. So everyone cheer up. It's fantastic.
Right. Yeah. Well,
We found a Samoan.
but I'll give you my perspective on this. Joanne just said, how do we live in a communist country? And, I don't know that the United States is ever going to go full commie. It will look more like a heavy-handed Canada than,
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a great analogy. I never heard that before, but I would say that's the more accurate scenario.
Yeah. It'll be a heavy-handed Canada, but not like a Soviet bloc country, mostly because local government is still quite strong, and there are still an awful lot of guns in the hands of everyday average Americans.
Over 300 million to be exact, in the United States, right?
So they don't have complete and total authority yet. What they will probably do, this is a guess, is that they will impose travel restrictions. They'll put out all kinds of communications restrictions. They've already, like we said, stripped President Trump of his Facebook, Twitter accounts. So social media is clamping down. YouTube already said that it's going to delete any video that says that the election was a fraud and that Joe Biden is not the president. So freedom of speech is going out the window. There are intimations, if you look at what's going on in Canada with regard to hate speech, it's illegal to say anything that would be inciting or harmful to the homosexual crowd, and harmful because their feelings got hurt. That's harm.
Yes, it is.
So, they're going to slowly erode our constitutional rights, our God-given rights to freedom of speech and freedom of the press. I mean, what's his name? The representative that just had his book.
Yeah.
Hawley.
Senator Hawley.
Yeah.
Josh.
Yeah. Hawley.
Yeah, that's it, right.
He had a book contract with, and I don't remember the company, but
Simon and Schuster.
Which one?
Simon and Schuster.
That's it. Yeah. Right. He had a book contract with Simon and Schuster, and what did they do? They reneged on the contract. They're not going to publish his book.
Right.
So now Josh Hawley. That's it.
That's right.
So now they're going to restrict access to the press, restrict our free speech. Oh, and they are already restricting our right to the free and open practice of our religion. And they're just, and Joe Biden's already made it clear that he's going to really push hard to restrict that even further by imposing more mask regulations and all that kind of stuff. So that's going to get very quickly shut down. And then on top of that, they are going to come after our guns, because that's the only other way that they can enact full and total control for us. Oh yes, and Apple is allegedly going after Parler now.
Yes,
I saw that just a little while ago.
That was my sister said that, by the way, Joan Goss. I thought I'd give her a little shout out there.
There you go. There you go. Are you sure you want to associate with this guy? I mean, it's dangerous. Who was it? One of the founding fathers, can't remember which one it was, Benjamin Franklin, I think, who said, if we don't hang together, we'll surely hang separately.
Yes. Right. God, you're not kidding. Hey, do you think, let me tell you something, because there's a personal thing of mine. The gun thing, he's made his intentions clear. Can he do this? I know he can issue an executive order, right?
Oh, I mean, look, they have control over all three branches of government now.
I know.
Well, they don't quite have control over.
I think we lost you, Hitch, or me.
Oh, I'm back. Am I back?
Yeah, you're back now. Good.
It's just a matter of time. Because they've already talked about how they're going to stack the Supreme Court, which means they're going to put in more justices and try and overwhelm the current conservative majority, even though we've been wholly betrayed by Kavanaugh and Roberts.
Right.
So there's a reason why certain cases were not heard in the Supreme Court. But you
Sure.
know, it is what it is. Now, yeah, Joanne says we're living in a nightmare. And yes, it is scary. But we can't let it disturb us. We can't let it disturb our peace. It's going to affect the livelihoods of many people. It's going to affect our ability to communicate. It's going to affect our ability to get the truth. It's going to and it's going to be a period of great mass confusion. Mass confusion. It's going to be very, very difficult. But I want to, if you haven't seen my newsletter yet from today, I highly encourage you to read it. And if you're not on the newsletter list, shame on you. You should be on it. But what I wrote about today, I said that the current crisis that we are in is such that it's not that Our Lady is deaf, and it's not that God didn't hear the pleas and supplications and prayers that we have been making for the last several months. They gave their answer, and the answer is Calvary. The answer is suffering. We have to suffer. If we don't suffer, then there can't be any resurrection. If we don't die with Christ, we won't rise with Christ. If we don't take our stripes with Christ, we can't be healed in Christ. So there is suffering that is to come. And what we should rejoice in is that we are being given a great opportunity to combat the darkness by the light of the cross. And the light of the cross is our willingness to accept the suffering that is to come.
You know what's interesting? The dichotomy is amazing, right? Now, how are these guys gaining power? They're gaining power by telling you that they can eliminate your suffering,
right?
And yet the narrative and the only real narrative of the truth is the only way to Christ is through suffering.
Yep.
And so please continue.
No, you're very right. And what it what it boils down to is that they want to eliminate the cross.
Yes.
You know, they want to, hey, we're going to eliminate suffering by eliminating death. Even we'll create a vaccine against death, and then you won't have to wear a mask anymore because no more death. My response to that is, who wants to live forever?
No
I don't. I mean, that's awful.
Yeah.
I love you guys, but this world is a terrible place. I'd much rather spend eternity with you guys in heaven, not here.
Yeah, that'd be better. I'm up for that, Hitch. I know what you're saying.
This place has mosquitoes and cockroaches. Heaven doesn't.
Somebody just said Saul Alinsky. What did they just say? Alinsky's rule for radical
is now in effect. Absolutely. Yeah, it sure is.
Right.
That reminds you should tell them the story, your Alinsky story.
Thank you. This is great. Okay. So my sister Joan is on this this call, by the way. So I went up and we had a great Christmas up in Newport, Rhode Island, you know. So we get off the plane and they hand you this communist manifesto about how you're supposed to lock down for 14 days. And I'm not wearing a mask and I'm getting yelled at the whole time because I refuse to do this nonsense. But so my daughter and I are starving. So we walk into a restaurant and the guy goes, can I have your name and your phone number for contact tracing? And I go, certainly, you know, and I was giving a beat. And I go, my name is Saul Alinsky. And the guy writes it down and then goes, and I go, would you like my telephone number? I go, sure. It's 561-666-6666. And so he's going, well, that's a really odd number. And I go, yeah, but, and I go, do you need her name? I go, this is Margaret Sanger, Sanger. So my daughter turned around and, you know, she knew what I was doing. And the guy had no clue, apparently, you know, whatever. And she just started biting her hand. And it was just hilarious. We sat down. I just looked at it. I did not even crack a smile, but it was really funny. So I suggest strongly that everyone do that. We're in. It was hilarious.
I love it. I love it. Sorry, my internet stream froze for a few seconds. So
Oh, yeah, no worries, man.
anyway, no, I love that story. He was telling me that story as I was wolfing down some dinner. I almost spit out my my soda. Anyway, so we're going to have to get creative, you know.
Yes.
They're going to start doing things like the contact tracing. They're going to start doing all sorts of things to try and monitor and control every aspect of our life. But we've seen this coming for years.
Yes.
I mean, how many science fiction movies do you have to watch?
I seriously, Hitch, that's the thing. And, you know, they do it by incrementalism.
Sure.
You know, and it was interesting. And I've often mentioned this. I was around some good people growing up, and they were talking about this. They were saying, do you see what they're doing, and the importance of personal freedom and fighting for it? But it's incrementalism, and I think the, in a roundabout way, not in a roundabout way. Look, the left, these guys aren't stopping, and I am absolutely, in a way, I kind of admire their energy. It's diabolical, but I mean, they just don't stop. As actually, again, my sister sent over a message before. We have to call the resistance. We've got to get to work. We have to call unity. You know, pull people together, particularly faithful Catholics, because these guys have enormous energy and they have religious fervor. Except it's the other side.
Yep.
You know, and quite literally the other side. You know,
well, and that's the point. That's the key point right there. They have religious fervor.
Yes.
The problem that we are facing right now, and the reason why we have fallen to the degree that we have, is that our side does not have religious fervor.
Nope.
They don't. As Fulton Sheen had said, there are two aspects to a flame: light and heat. We have the light. They have the heat.
Yes.
They have that fire in their belly, and we are missing it. The saints had both. Many of us, after the Second Vatican Council, I grew up after the Second Vatican Council. I was born after the council, about 10 years after the council. But many of us who grew up in that era, oh yeah, sure, we intellectualized the faith, and we understood the faith from an intellectual standpoint, but there was no fire in our bellies for it. We didn't, you know, somebody wasn't going to say something about, oh, you damn Catholics, and I was going to raise my fists and start pummeling someone.
Right.
There was no fire in my belly, and there was a lot of, well, you believe what you believe, and I believe what I believe, and you know, we can still get along, we can still play, and that's fine. Now, I remember asking questions of my friends and saying, how come you're not Catholic? You know, not understanding that they don't go to church on Sunday. But it was more of the curiosity of a child, and not really so much the fervor for souls or the thirst for salvation. That came later.
Yeah,
and it was, what's that?
Me too, by the way.
Yeah. It came later, and a lot of it.
But it came from, because you had great parents, and you had people around you who little by little kind of worked on you day in and day out. And that's the thing I'm most grateful for, because you wake up one day and go, my goodness, they were right. This is what they were saying all along. Like your grandfather, right? Your mom, dad, you know, they were saying this all along. And then the light bulb goes on. And then, at least that's what happened to me. And I look around, Michael, and it's like, Hitch, I fear, because sometimes I think it may be too late in a way, but you know, but please continue.
Well, I distinctly remember there was a point in time in my, well, I guess about my middle teens, you know, I had a lot of questions, and I really wasn't concerned about my faith. And I don't know exactly what it was that spurred me into really thinking about it. But I just remember at one point, there was a horrendous storm raging outside. I mean, it was violent. And I'd never seen a violent storm like this. And it was so terrifying. I thought I was going to die. And I distinctly remember being extremely afraid, not just of dying, but because all of a sudden I was faced with the prospect of judgment. And I wondered about the salvation of my soul. And I started thinking, I haven't really been living as if I believed my faith. And that storm was so fierce. And I was so afraid that I got on my knees and I cried and I begged God to spare me. And, you know, I mean, I'm a fallen human being. It's not like, you know, it was one and done. And suddenly I walked with the light of St. Francis on my shoulders and, you know, no, it didn't happen.
Oh.
But, and it still hasn't happened, by the way. But that moment is exactly what it took for me to realize that there's something more to my faith that I'm not exploring. And that fire in my belly, that desire to save my own soul, translated into the desire for the salvation of others. Because if I'm afraid for my own soul, shouldn't I also be afraid for the souls of others? If I would stop someone from stepping on a landmine, would I not try and stop them from sinning? Would I try and not stop them from offending God? Or would I even do them a favor and say, look, that way is the minefield. Why would you walk through that? Go this way where, you know, it's not as clear a path, but at least it's not a minefield. You're not going to blow yourself up.
Sure.
You know, follow this path. Would I not desire to lead people to the right path? And all this line of thinking is really what drew me to trying to understand and study my faith in such a deep way that I could convey it to others in a way that was convincing. And ultimately, through the course of many, many different things and a lot of trials and mistakes, and it drew me to this point where I am doing what I'm doing now. And so, you know, you look at the world and you say, so many people have no sense of their own mortality.
Yeah.
How can they possibly be concerned about the salvation of others? And that's why they have no fire in their belly. But the people who do have a fire in their belly have a sense of a false kind of religion. It's the religion of the civilization of man, where individuals don't matter, just the building up of the civilization and having the civilization be perfect in their according to their own way of thinking.
Right. Right. The God-shaped hole gets filled somehow, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And so since I loved your analogy on why would you go through the landmine, the minefield? Right?
Yeah.
So the God-shaped hole needs to be filled. Man has a tendency towards arrogance and avoiding pain. Right. So if the Christian, the Catholic way is the really tough way, that's the way you got to pick up that cross thing. And it's really kind of a mess. And so with arrogance kind of seeping in there, sure enough, they absolutely reject that because of pride. And then this is where we are. And that's what brought me back, because I noticed it. The first time I noticed it, this is actually, your story was interesting, the same with me. The first time I noticed it was when I realized that the concept of sin was gone. I just woke up one day and I was like, there's no more sin. There's only feelings now.
Interesting.
And I went, you know, it kind of, I would say in my late 20s. And I said, that's really, really sort of interesting. And then all those voices that I was fortunate enough to have around me that were whispering me, they never left me, you know? And then, you know, you mess up and you have a storm like you had, and I had a few metaphorical storms myself. And next thing you know, you're going, wow. And then it's real. And then now you look around and you go, and look at the state we are in.
Yep.
And those same people that were around your life, I'm guessing, that were around mine, predicted this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what grabbed me. Observing. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was thinking, you know, it's interesting trying to brainstorm and figure out how to navigate the current storm that we're in. Somebody made an interesting point. Joanne said, our only solution is the military now. And here's a thought. Okay. So I think you're right. The solution is the military, but it's also the police, because it goes back to what I said at the beginning, that the authority of governance, any governor, their authority is only as strong as their ability to enforce their dictates.
Yes.
Perhaps what we need to do is not focus on politicians anymore. Perhaps what we need to do now is focus on evangelizing the military, evangelizing the police, being familiar with them, talking to them, hanging out with them, getting to know them, helping them to understand that we aren't just chattel to be guided and sequestered however the government wants, but that we are individual human beings who live individual human lives, and we all have souls of value, and that we should be building each other up, not trying to control and manipulate each other.
That's a great idea. I never thought of it perspective. That really is. Huh.
I think it's probably one of the only ways that we'll be able to mitigate the circumstances that we're in.
Right. To your point, I was just thinking about what you just said. It's really cool. One of the things is, at the end of the day, too, you look at any, even from a local law enforcement standpoint, right? The senior law enforcement official, usually in most counties, at least in the South, is the sheriff. That's the senior law enforcement official. And it's interesting because where I live in South Florida and where you live in Virginia. Now, remember, this is interesting. The senior law enforcement official, when the governor of Virginia wanted to ban weapons, said, we're not enforcing the law. That's not legal. And so, to your point, right? What a great idea! Like, where you form those alliances with these guys, not under special circumstances, but no, this is our unalienable rights as citizens. These are God-given rights and we need you.
Yes.
We don't need you to enforce the law with these power-hungry idiots. We're on your side.
Yeah.
So continue your thought. I never thought of it that way. We never discussed it before this. I think that's great.
Yeah, my wife read a story fairly recently. It was a very depressing story. It was about a particular village in Hungary that was overrun by Nazis. Now, you have to remember, Hungary was under communist occupation at the time World War II began. And when the Germans got into the town, everybody believed that the Germans were liberators, that they were there to help, and they welcomed these soldiers into their homes, and they fed them, and they joked with them. And slowly the Germans started imposing certain sanctions. They put a curfew on, then they started controlling their movements, and then they started controlling who they were talking to. And the young people were the ones who said, something's not right here. This isn't right. And I think that there was one person, a part of the story, one person had run from one village, another village over to this particular village. And he told them, do not believe them. They are going to kill you all, because he had seen the execution of everybody in his village. He was the only survivor. And as he was trying to explain things to this village in Hungary, they started to listen, but the Nazis showed up and said, oh, this poor guy, he's crazy.
Not right in the head.
Yeah, he's not right. And they said, look, we'll take care of him for you. And they removed him. And the young people who were listening said that, no, there's something not right here. We need to leave, or we need to do something. And it was the older people who said, no, you just have to obey. Just obey, and things will be fine. Just obey on this one thing. And with each new imposed law, it was, well, it's just not going to get worse than this. Just obey this one thing.
Incrementalism.
Yep. Until finally they were all loaded in trucks, put on a train, and sent to Auschwitz.
Right. Yep.
So
great story.
I think that we have to be very wary about where the military comes from. And quite honestly, I would not be surprised if there was some sort of insurrection in the United States and Joe Biden called in the United Nations to help, because the United Nations are not Americans.
Right.
And it's very easy for people who are not Americans, who are not us, to not listen to us, especially if they don't speak the language. So there are various ways that we have to be wary of what's happening. But if we get to know our local law enforcement, we get to know our local, make sure that local elections, they're going to matter, and they're going to matter a lot.
If they are
coming up. Local elections are going to be far more important than national and state elections. If you don't have the support of your local police force, you're in for a world of hurt. Get out of the cities, stay out of the cities. Don't go anywhere near cities now. I think that they're going to try and impose some sort of forced vaccine, but it's not going to be forced in the sense that they're going to tell you, they're going to go house to house and door to door and round everyone up and corral them and then force a jab in the arm. I don't think it's going to be anything like that. I think it's going to be more of a, oh, you want to fly on our airplane? You have to make sure that you've got the mark that says you are vaccinated. Or, oh, you want to buy groceries here at our grocery store? Where's your mark?
Or you want a job?
You want a job? Where's your mark?
Yeah, I think that is it. Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, you need to withdraw money. It's going to come to that.
Yeah, right.
Could very well come to that. So they are going to make things very difficult. And there are lines that we should not cross. And honestly, I think it starts with the mask mandate. It's time to stop complying. It's time to stop complying.
Yes, it is. Well said. I could not agree with you more. Enough. They do absolutely nothing. I have not complied the entire time.
Not me. I mean, I have once or twice, but only because I didn't want to get other people in trouble. Right.
Exactly right. That's what I did too. Or like I couldn't get in the store without it, and it came off.
You know what I did? When I was traveling up to Connecticut, trying to remember when that happened. I guess it was back in October. I had to make a stop at a gas station because, we drove up to Connecticut. So we had to make a pit stop, and I had my glasses on, and they had a sign on there that says you can't come in unless you have, your stupid face diaper. So I took a napkin and I tucked it underneath my glasses. So it was just kind of dangling there from underneath my glasses, and they didn't stop me. It doesn't say mask. It says face covering.
Face covering.
That's right. It's a face covering.
Michael, you are so absolutely right. I think that's where we start. I think we have to get used to civil disobedience. Let's go with the mask because we have to. First of all, let's really call it what it is. There's no evidence this does anything, right? There's no scientific evidence that this does anything, right? And any guy, all of my military friends tell me this. And my family members who happen to be in the medical profession, nurses, doctors, that kind of thing, they're like, once you touch that mask, it's over, and it doesn't stop COVID. Yep. And I'm going, enough of this. And I agree with you. I mean, I'm calling for it too, man. You couldn't have said it better. Enough. No more masks.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. This is what it means to practice virtue, right? So you practice virtue. A lot of people, New Year's resolutions. We'll go there. So a lot of people, they come up with New Year's resolutions. What do? They come up with the hardest, most crazy thing. I'm going to lose 85 pounds this year. I'm going to get up at 4:30 in the morning. What time do you normally get up? 8 o'clock. Oh, so you're suddenly going to be able to get up at 4:30. Okay. I'm going to deadlift 300 pounds this year. How much can you lift? About 60 pounds. Okay. So, if you start big, well, you're going to quit real fast. This is why practicing virtue starts with the little things. And our Lord was very clear on this. He said, those who are obedient to the little things will be obedient to the large things. To whom, if you're not obedient to the large things, then even the little things you won't be obedient to. And it's very true with regard to following these mandates and everything else. So if you have the masks, if you become used to civil disobedience on little things like stupid masks, and it really is stupid. I mean, it's not, you feel the shame when people, make fun of you or yell at you and you feel like you've done something wrong. Well, you haven't.
That's
And
right.
once you recognize that the best they can do is yell at you or tell you to get out of the store, well, so be it. And
Yeah.
then you kind of you callous yourself.
Right.
It's like a workman. He's working on something and he gets calluses on his fingers. Well, those calluses make it easier for him to work without hurting his skin.
Yep.
Now you become a little bit tougher and you become a little kind of abrasive, just like a callus is. But the fact of the matter is that you start to become immune to it, and you have to start in the little things. But if you're not going to be able to resist the mask, there's no way you're going to resist the immunization when it comes.
Oh, what a great point. You're exactly right. Again, what is their strategy? Incrementalism, little by
Right.
little by little. And that's what I'm saying too. And when they ask for contact tracing, no, it's none of your business.
Right. Yep.
I'm saying become a professional pain. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Especially when I found out it doesn't do anything. I
Right.
can't help but think this. They're training you.
Yes. That's exactly what they're doing. They are training you to be obedient so
Yeah.
that finally when they come for your guns, you'll just hand them out.
Right. That's exactly right. And by the way, for those of you who think that's a good idea, look into where they did that, like Australia,
Mhm.
okay, or Great Britain. The murder rate after the mandatory gun hand-in is up 20% since then. The gun murder rate's actually higher because they know nobody's armed.
Yeah.
Going.
Yep. Mike Smith just said he never shops at Trader Joe's instead of Trader Joe's. I now, you realize, Mike, now I have to Photoshop a picture of the Trader Joe's logo with Joe Biden on there and call it Trader Joe's. I'm going to do that. Yeah. I can't not do it now.
You have to.
I have to. It's already done. It's in my head and now it won't come out.
Oh, this is great. Can I read this? Hang on a second, Hitch. Look
Yeah.
at Lisa Evers at 750.
Okay.
Look at that. What if Catholic Patriots United coordinated and at a certain time walked into their local grocery stores without masks and stood our ground, praying the rosary until the police show up? Good times.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not it, but what I'm suggesting is, as Catholics uniting and just, because there's a lot of us, and just going, no, enough of this. Really, and if it looks like a formal move like that, sure, that's tremendous. But I'm talking about, like, if enough people I'm amazed that nobody thinks anymore, but that's another story. But if enough people just decide not to follow us, there's nothing they can do.
Right.
There's nothing they can do.
Joanne says that Americans will never give up their guns. I wish that were true.
Yes, I wish. You know what? I 50 years ago, I would have agreed with that.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish it were true too. I can't add to that, Hitch.
I just remember during or shortly after the last major school shooting,
Yeah.
You had a lot of people were saying, I'm pro-gun and I'm a member of the NRA, and they started cutting up their NRA membership. And I saw one guy take a really expensive rifle.
It was an AR-15. Yeah,
an AR-15.
Cut it in half with a Sawzall or something.
Yeah.
I'm going, oh boy, you really showed him. What are you kidding?
Right.
Again, Hitch, this is what we're talking about. And I've been watching this my whole life, right? These people are morons. Okay, when I was a kid, it was the anti-war movement. Hold on a second. Now, let me ask you something. My father was a combat officer in Korea. Have you ever met any military person who likes war? I
didn't know Patton personally, so
I didn't know him personally either, but they all hate it. But what I'm trying to say is, oh, that's it. The issue's war. See, if we just get rid of the issue, this is insane. I mean, like, you know what I'm saying? And it was like, then they're like, if we get rid of our nuclear weapons, Russia's perfectly reasonable. Really?
Yeah.
You want to and now, so all of a sudden, now these geniuses want to get rid of, the last line of defense, your personal safety, right?
Right.
Even in the face of overwhelming evidence. right? And now it's virtue signaling to do this. It is so terrifyingly stupid. It's amazing.
Yeah, no,
Absolutely.
it really is.
Right. And let's just look at this for a second, okay? This guy, I remember I watched it. I was like, what a moron. I was like, I would have, yeah, that's another story. It was like, he cuts his gun in half with one of those like table saw things, like they go, right now, they're about, $1 or $2 grand. And I'm watching this idiot do this. And I remember, these people are just so dim. In the first place, every one of these school shooters had one thing, a few things in common. They were male, they were on psychotropic drugs, and they had no father at home in a broken family.
Right.
Why don't we start there? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, and what's next too? That and by the way, if you did do that, if you think a guy was really hell bent on blowing up a bunch of kids in the gun-free school zone, don't get me started on that. Oh, well, how did he get in? It was a gun-free school zone. But you don't think he's going to get a bomb? You know what I mean? What I'm saying is, I mean, you know the arguments as well as I do. But what I'm terrified is that nobody thinks about this stuff. Like that's going to do it.
Well, here's the other part of it, right? The guy cuts his own gun in half.
Yeah.
How many kids did that save?
0.
Right. Unless he was planning on shooting up a school.
Correct. And the other irony is, if he had that while some guy was shooting up a school,
right?
Here you go.
Yeah. So I mean, it's absolutely asinine. You brought up something interesting. This is kind of a different topic. You said that nobody really likes war. And it reminded me of a post that one of my wife's and my former students had put on Facebook recently. Her husband was looking forward to no longer having to deploy to Iraq or I'm sorry, Afghanistan. Because his commanders said that, hey, look, it looks like Trump's going to win. So when that happens, no more deployments to Afghanistan after April, because Trump was going to bring everyone home and there was going to be no longer any American occupation in Afghanistan. Once it looked like Biden was actually really going to win, his commander then said, looks like we're going to be continuing to deploy to Afghanistan indefinitely.
Oh,
so
wow.
The party of peace,
right.
The Democrats are really and truly the party of war.
Uh-huh.
And they accuse us of being violent. They accuse us,
Yeah, a great point. And by the way, and again, forgive me, this audience probably knows what I'm about to say. Starting with Ronald Reagan, okay, when he squared off against the Soviets, the only thing they understood, and they found this out after the Soviet Union fell because they got the KGB documents, was that they understood that he had resolve. And when he sat down at the table at Reykjavik, he had the SDI, Star Wars Initiative, Strategic Defense Initiative. They knew they were toast. They knew he meant business, right? That's the only thing. There are bad people in the world. They knew he meant business. Now, to your point, Donald Trump brought them all home. He went to NATO. This was great, and it was actually my favorite Donald Trump scene ever, when he was sitting with the NATO people saying, "Hey, you got to pay your bill," and then Macron tried to embarrass him by giving this impassioned speech, looking right at him in French. And when he was done, he said to him, "It was a great speech, sounded good, but as you know, I don't speak French, but you still have to pay."
I love it.
It's my favorite Trumpism ever. He goes, oh, "As you know, I don't speak French, but it sounded really good, but you got to pay. This is World War II. Fork it over, and yet they look, and they looked at us with disdain even. And I just said, the only thing, there are bad people in the world, and the only way to stop bad people is with good people who have power. Whether that be a gun or an SDI missile, I don't know.
Right. You have to start responding to them in the same language they understand, which is the Charlie Brown adult speak. Wah, 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 wah.
Oh, but they
understand.
It's been the same logic the entire. It's been the same logic my whole life. You know what I mean? And it's been. Your mom said something. Catherine, right? She says that it scrolled across before, and said they stopped teaching logic.
Right.
And you had a very good point. Didactic reasoning.
Yeah.
How? I mean, in what planet does taking your gun away help anyone else but the guy who wants the power?
Yep. Bingo.
Any sort of understanding of history, even the most marginal, the first thing they do. Anyway, keep going. I'm like, it's tiring with these people.
It is. It is.
Mm.
I'm actually really glad that we're having this conversation because it's been such a disheartening week. It's good to
Yeah.
be in good
Cathartic.
company.
Yeah, it is. It's cathartic. I'm
Yeah.
really enjoying this and the comments and everything. Thanks, you guys.
Yeah,
We're
no,
all-
it's very cathartic. So I'm just going to we're at 8 o'clock, but I want to wrap this up a little bit. My son and I actually went to DC, as you know.
Oh, right.
We went to DC on Wednesday. My 13-year-old son went with me, and we took a bus in because there's no way I was going to try and park in the middle of shenanigans. And especially in DC, I hate DC. I hate driving into it. I hate everything about the city. And so we get in and we made our way to the area where everybody was hanging out for the big event. And these people were the nicest people you've ever met.
Right.
My son and I, it was actually even more pleasant. I have to say, it was more pleasant than the March for Life. These people were that pleasant. And we were just kind of weaving through person traffic,
Yeah.
making our way closer to the podium so that we could hear the speeches better. And we just hung out and we wound up talking to some of the people around us, and they were all excited and they were just really happy to be there. There was not a single indication from anyone that they wanted to go storm the Capitol building. Now, I went to lunch when Trump's speech was wrapping up. I went to lunch with some people, and we were hanging out. And the next thing I know, my mom starts texting me and says, "Are you guys okay?" It's like, "What are you talking about?" She said, "Well, there are reports of explosions going on there at the Capitol building." I said, "I'm not hearing anything." A couple of police cruisers whizzed by, but nothing real big. And then she started saying that there were reports that they had breached the security walls, and they started bum rushing the Capitol building, and there was chaos and everything else. And I had friends who were there, and they said, well, they let them in. They opened up the barricades. There was no bum rush. They let them in.
Right.
And now you can see video. There's video out there. You can see video of the police opening the barricades and saying, "Hey, come on, go this way, go that way." There was no violence, no nothing. And then there's video you see of these knuckleheads with hammers and axes, and they're sitting there beating on the windows and they're breaking the glass. And you see a bunch of patriots around those guys calling for the cops to come help, as some of the other patriots are pulling these guys down away from the windows and wrestling the hammers away from their hands. So all of this talk about how it was patriots, Trump supporters, who bum rushed the Capitol building is not true. They were let in. They thought they were being let in. The police were certainly not inhibiting them and were telling them, "Hey, go this way." But when it came down to the violence came from Antifa folks, not from Trump supporters. And a lot of this came out afterward. It was just, it felt very deflating coming back from
This is a great point, Hitch. You know the idiot with the horns, that guy?
Oh, yeah.
Now, he had very distinctive tattoos. You couldn't possibly replicate.
Right.
This guy is at a BLM rally.
Mm-hmm.
Even the mainstream guys were going, "Nah, there weren't Antifa people."
Right.
This is where you want to like rip your hair out. Go ahead.
Well, this is why what we're facing is a coup. And it really and truly is a coup, because what happens in a coup, the first thing they have to do is they have to secure the lines of communication. And what they did is they secured the lines of communication. They cut off Trump. They cut off patriots who were trying to get the word out and say that this is this or that is that. They cut off, and the second part of a coup is to control the media. Make sure the media only reports what the coup wants them to report and does not report what the coup does not want them to report.
Check.
Done.
Right?
Okay. The third part of a coup is to actually secure the seats of power. They did that. Well, sort of. They put themselves in positions to secure the seats of power. They haven't actually done it because in order to do it, they have to get to the the oath of office portion, which we'll see what happens. But this is absolutely a coup. And the fact that they are now controlling our communications and trying to totally take over all of the aspects of our federal government, there's no doubt that this was a coup.
Yeah.
So there were people that have lived in banana republics, people that have lived through coup events and lived through all kinds of other, even in communist Russia and communist China, people have lived through it. It sucks. Yep. I mean, it's the suffering is immense for these people. And that's why my message for everyone is make sure you are practicing mortification, and make sure that you are slowly building up your immunity to their will to impose sanctions on you.
Great point.
And that's how we have to approach this. There's no other way.
Yep.
There's no other way.
Resist.
Yeah. Resist. Resistance is the only way that isn't that what exercise is?
Yes.
Is putting tension, resistance against something else.
100%.
So this is exercise. Look at it as exercise. You're exercising virtue. You're exercising your free will. And if you exercise your free will, well, your free will gets stronger, just as your muscles get stronger. So exercise your free will by not wearing a mask. Exercise your free will by not abiding by their stupid rules. Don't play along. Don't play along. Just tell them, I'm sorry, I'm not playing that game.
Yeah.
And if they kick you out, they kick you out. So what?
I agree. I've actually been doing it for a while. I can't take it.
Yeah.
As soon as I found out that it was absolutely useless, I just, wow.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Yep.
Yeah. And after a while, you get used to the Karens of the world.
Oh God.
Manager.
Where's the manager? Yeah. No, we have to build up our resistance. We have to build up our resolve. We have to strengthen our wills. We have to strengthen our, prudence, justice, fortitude, and temperance. If you practice them in the little things, you will slowly be able to develop an indomitable fortitude against their attempt to impose their will on you and your family. And you won't give up your guns when push comes to shove. But be faithful in the little things so that you can then be faithful in the big things. And that's the message for tonight.
Perfect. Thank you, Hitch.
So after a very long week, I'm going to go have a scotch.
I recommend that highly.
Got it for Christmas. I can't wait. So why don't we go ahead and close with our prayer, and I will look forward to seeing all of you next week, provided, and wear black on the 20th. And I'm working with a few others. We're going to try and get this to be a big thing. Wear black on the 20th as a sign of national mourning. If you have flags in your yard, put them at half staff.
That's great.
Yep.
I have a flag. That's happening.
Yep. Let's do it.
That's tremendous. All right. Yeah, I'm in.
All righty. So black on the 20th. And in the meantime, we will see you all next week, provided Twitter hasn't removed us from any means of communication. And at which point we'll be on Rumble, if I can figure that one out.
I got that this week. All right.
Yeah.
Close of the prayer, sir.
Absolutely. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum. Benedicta tu in mulieribus, et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus.
Sancta Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostrae. Amen.
Our Lady of Victory.
Pray for us.
In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. All right. God bless all of you, and as well as it can be weak.
Thanks, guys.